Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is the August edition of my monthly ranking series. Every month here on the channel, I rank all of the new releases that I have seen in that month from worst to best. And August was a doozy. So July, I only had 8 movies to rank, which was a tiny month for me. However, August turned that around quick because this was the biggest month of the year so far, and I ended up with 18 new releases. So quick disclaimer before we jump into the ranking, this is just my personal opinion, and it's based on my own enjoyment factor with each film. It's not necessarily the best made films at the top, or we're certainly not ranking anything to do with box office or critical reception. It's just which ones I liked the best or thought were the best films. So of course, this is just my ranking, and I can't wait for you to share your own ranking in the comments down below. Without further ado, we have a lot of films to get through, including 3 mini reviews when I hit some of the movies that I saw this month in which I didn't get a chance to review. So let's kick things off. Coming in at number 18, aka Dead Last, is 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. Yeah, this was pretty terrible. I found very little to be redeeming when it came to 47 Meters Down. It took what was a simple, straightforward, but a fun and pretty effective formula in the first film and squandered it completely, threw all of that down the drain for, well, this hot mess. Not only is it my worst of August, but it pretty much cemented itself within my 10 worst films of 2019 so far. So, yeah, 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. Well, we can just bury this one 47 meters under and forget it ever existed. At number 17, I have Nora and the Lost City of Gold. I know a lot of people seem to really enjoy this film, and it has a great score, and, people were kind of singing its praises. But again, this is my ranking, and I don't understand. I'm just gonna put it bluntly. I don't understand really what was seen here. Self-awareness can only take you so far. Isabel Moner gives a great performance, but outside of that, it's very hokey. It crosses over just blurring the line to just making fun of Dora, the original animated show that everyone loves. And just because you're self-aware doesn't mean the tone finds itself. And oftentimes we give films a big pass for being self-aware or for realizing what they are. But honestly, being self-aware without the substance behind it doesn't mean a whole lot to me. There are some fun moments, but there's also a ton of horrible potty humor, and I just don't know who this was made for. You have a teenage Dora with this kind of action-y Tomb Raider type of feel and atmosphere with really young childlike jokes and the overall tone of the child show. So I don't know who this was aimed at, and I don't know who they were even looking to aim this at, and honestly, it was just a jumbled mess for me. At number 16, I have Angel Has Fallen. Meh. That is pretty much what I have to say about Angel Has Fallen. Another generic Gerard Butler action film. We get 1 to 2 of these a year, and I'm just shocked that the Has Fallen franchise is now a trilogy, and the way it's going at the box office could very well see a 4th installment. Certainly better than that horrific 2nd installment, but in the end, it's just a pretty bland, generic Gerard Butler action film. That's about it. Coming in at number 15, I have Don't Let Go. This one was tough because the premise was very interesting and had me intrigued right from the beginning. The lead performances were strong and they had a good connection with one another, and there were things to really enjoy here. Unfortunately, an important part of filmmaking completely failed, and that was the screenwriting, because the script was terrible and it let everything else in the movie down. It let the performances and characters down, it let the story at large down, and it really let what could have been an awesome premise completely fall flat. I really don't think Don't Let Go was terrible by any means. It just didn't live up to what could have been a really good film. At number 14, I have Good Boys. I know, right? Yep, that's right. I have Good Boys way down at number 14. Again, this is my list. Rotten Tomatoes and critical reception does not apply here. Simply put, this just is not my brand of humor. I was sitting there thinking, I'd be swatting these little children's booties. Oh my gosh, this is outrageous. Honestly, it just wasn't that funny to me. It seemed like a really one note, one joke kind of film. Every now and then you'd get a chuckle here, a chuckle there. And I do enjoy that by the end we were kind of digging to get to more serious topics that were handled pretty well when it comes to friendship. But it's when it's played out with these like little kids, it still kind of comes across as a joke, rather than really addressing what it's trying to say about friendship and growing up. But it felt really one note and flat for me, and that note that it played over and over again just doesn't work in my line of comedy. So, number 14. I didn't like it so much. Sorry. At number 13, I have Brian Banks. This is based on a pretty crazy real life true story about NFL player Brian Banks. It's a really enthralling true story that unfortunately is a little bit too common. But I certainly applaud this film for shedding light on false imprisonments and what that looks like and the difficulties that come along with trying to overturn and get free people proper justice. Plus, Brian Banks' story itself is really interesting and an unfortunate reminder of so many people who have slipped through the cracks of our justice system. Plus, the performances were really strong. Now, what keeps Brian Banks from really elevating and being, a great film with this wonderful material was handed? Well, all of the filmmaking aspects are just below theatrical release par. It's pretty bland and flat in all filmmaking aspects, cinematography, shooting, the editing, and the script also just can't live up to the great story and finds itself falling into cliches and really never quite clicks. But the positive is able to lift up that negative just a bit, just not quite enough to break into the top 12. At number 12, I have Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Another film with a great Rotten Tomato score, but this time I more or less agree with a lot of the points being made in the reviews, not necessarily that score. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I think, works really well for the target audience it was going for. Preteens. This is an awesome movie for that preteen age group. It has some scares, and most importantly, the scary stories that are in the film are done really well. The practical effects, the creature designs, the build-up within those are mostly done really well. However, with everything between that fails hard. The acting in this movie, whew, I don't want to give them too much because they're kids, but even the adults are just bad in this movie. The writing behind the actual story that they constructed is so generic and so foolish. The dialogue feels so inauthentic, and if you're not a preteen, the scares just are not there. So it more or less accomplishes what it needed to accomplish for the audience it was aiming to scare, but I can't help but think this would have made a much better anthology series. At number 11, I have Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. So the first Fast and Furious spin-off was pretty fun. It had a lot of really great moments. Particularly, I loved every single car action in this movie. There's a car chase scene that is out of this world, just insanity and ridiculous, but also a lot of fun with motorcycles and dodging buses. It's over the top, but it's pretty cool. And then we get cars linking up with one another to try to weigh down a helicopter, and it's bonkers, but in the best possible way. Plus, The Rock and Jason Statham have some fun chemistry, but Vanessa Kirby definitely brings life to the dynamic here. Unfortunately, the Hobbs and Shaw dynamic wore a little bit thin for me by the end. I was like, okay, we've heard y'all making fun of each other back and forth quite enough. And honestly, the movie wears on too long for me. The second and third acts really could have used quite a bit of trimming down. The movie is way too long for what it is, and you can't help but start to get bored, even though it's a big action, goofy film. So, Hobbs and Shaw is basically like the perfect dad kind of film. Dad humor, dad jokes, mixed with really big, ridiculous, turn your brain off kind of action. And by all means, please don't pay attention to the technical aspects or lighting in which the film takes place. Whew. At number 10, I have The Kitchen. Another shocker, I know. What? The Kitchen up at number 10? I liked it. Sorry about it. I don't think it was nearly as bad as the critical reception at large has found it to be. First of all, I think our three leads are really good in this movie. Melissa McCarthy is great, I would say. She brings so much to a role that could have been very limited in one note. Tiffany Haddish also really delivers, and Elizabeth Moss just gets to go crazy, and she's pretty great at it. Plus, Domino Gleeson is stellar in this movie as well. And I thought they all had good chemistry. Plus, we get like really fun, good mob moments. And I think this succeeds at being a mainstream mob film that general audiences who enjoy this type of movies can enjoy. It's not a 3-hour long epic. It's never going to be one of the best mob films of all time, but it hits all the beats. It goes where you need a good mob movie to go, and it has some heart in there too. Now, it does follow a lot of tropes, and some of the humor is a bit misguided. Some of the filmmaking is not great either, but overall, it just worked for me. It's not the best made film. I can't defend that. But I certainly had a better time watching this one than I did every other film lower on the list. So, The Kitchen makes it to my top 10. Coming in at number 9, I have The Angry Birds Movie 2. Another animated sequel I don't know that any of us asked for. But this one was much better received than the first, and I have to generally agree with that. This was an improvement over that first film. However, I left the theater like, what in the world did I just watch? It is so all over the place. It is so ridiculous, bonkers. These jokes are crazy and over the top. Random sing-alongs, random dance sequences. I mean, it is crazy. But they just throw so much at the wall that enough sticks to laugh and have a decent enough time with it. All of our characters are fine. All of the voice acting is really strong actually in this movie and adds some good character. The animation is definitely a step up from the first film, and we have some beautiful animated sequences here. And it got a few laughs out of me, so there's that. However, we still have the lowest common denominator type of humor here, the potty humor, the ridiculous humor. We have too many storylines going on. It feels really intercut. We keep weaving in and out, like the little hatchlings and their whole storyline, while they're cute, is virtually pointless. So it's weird, kind of formulaic, and still not great in my opinion, but I still laughed enough times and had fun with sequences like that bathroom sequence with the eagle that it gets its way up to number 9. Coming in at number 8, I have Where'd You Go, Bernadette? I know, this is a controversial month for me. I don't agree with anybody, apparently, for a good portion of August releases, and Where'd You Go, Bernadette is another one of those films. I thought it was pretty good. First of all, Cate Blanchett is perfect in this movie. I mean, she gives a stellar performance. No matter what you think of the movie at large, I think we all can accept Blanchett is amazing as Bernadette. She gives that character so much, and she's just so fun to watch here. And I think what really elevates this film for me personally is that the first 2 acts feature my brand of humor, like this kind of sarcastic, kind of dry, kind of snarky, a little bit mean humor is right up my alley, and that's what we're presented here. That's what Bernadette is serving up in mass for the first 2 acts of the film, so I was laughing and having a good time. I certainly was on board for this self-discovery for a woman who had kind of lost herself in the role of motherhood. I enjoyed going on this journey with her. Now, I will say the film is a hot mess structurally. Our side characters are not fleshed out in any satisfactory way. And there's a whole lot of melodrama that I was like, ooh, we could tone this down. But when you're focused on Bernadette, like the movie is for the majority of the time, I'm having a good time and I'm enjoying my experience. I have Where'd You Go, Bernadette, all the way up at number 8. Coming in at number 7, I have The Art of Racing in the Rain. We've been inundated with dog movies over the past couple of years, and this is the third major release of a live action dog film just this year. And it's certainly the best of the dog centered films we've received so far this year. The Art of Racing in the Rain has a lot of heart to it. The performances were all very strong. Milo Ventimiglia was really good in this movie. And I loved the tone that they gave the dog for this movie in his vocalizations. I love what they had him thinking, what they had him saying within his mind. And they really build a beautiful connection between owner and dog in this movie that makes all of the payoff in the final act completely worth it. It really lands, and it lands hard. So if you're a dog lover, you have to have those tissues ready, because the third act feels really authentic and earned, and I think that's a great sign of what a dog movie should do. So again, like Bernadette, the melodrama is where it gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. Thankfully, this movie, unlike A Dog's Journey that we received earlier this year, they stayed focused on the dog and his point of view. So while we did get the human drama going on that I certainly think we could have and should have scaled back on, it felt a little bit less intrusive this way. Plus, you could probably say it's emotionally manipulative or whatever the case might be. It is another dog movie, but I think it was a well executed one, and it really melted this icy cold heart. So, Art of Racing in the Rain, number 7. At number 6, I have Them That Follow. So this is one of the films I wasn't able to review on my channel formally, so I'm going to give a little, hopefully short, review right here. A major thing with a lot of indie horror these days is that it feels like a misdirect, and I kind of felt that way with Them That Follow. I was headed into the movie theater wanting a horror film, thinking I was going to get a horror film, and instead I got a drama that has some horrific elements to it. The performances are all stellar in this movie, and it actually deals with an ongoing issue of a religious fanaticism that is still going on in today's day and age. Yikes. But it really showcases the craziness behind religious fanatics. However, it's just too long. It takes a long time for us to get to a point where the film is really shining. The third act is great, and there are great moments in those first 2 acts. However, they take a little bit too much time just dilly-dallying without a whole lot of character development or development of the town, that it's like, okay, we need to get moving a little bit. It's not very well paced. But I liked what it had to say about religion, about sexism, about like cult mentality, honestly. That's my mini review and why Them That Follows comes in at number 6. Now we're getting to the top 5, and I just have to say, this was so difficult because I love all of these 5 films, and putting them into some sort of order was like mind numbing. It took like hours upon hours of just pondering how I felt about them. So take this top 5 ranking with a grain of salt. It very well could change just by next week. Breaking into the top 5, we have Ready or Not. This was certainly one of the most fun experiences I have had in a movie theater this year. First of all, Weaving, who is the lead in this film, was so good. Now, this is the type of scream queen I need in my life. It was such a great performance, a real career-making performance. Hopefully, it helps springboard her career into bigger, greater things. It was a fantastic character, really brought to life in a beautiful way by the actress portraying her. Plus, the script unfolds in really interesting, kind of quirky, and at times unexpected ways, While individual sequences fall into horror tropes and end up more or less where you're anticipating them to go, the story as a whole, when you start to piece everything together, ends up being a little bit shocking, even if things are forecasted throughout. It doesn't do the typical, like, fake out your thinking, especially when we get closer to the end. However, the movie's not scary, honestly, like at all. It's very gory, though, so you'll get your fix, don't worry. But it really serves as much more of a comedy horror than a horror comedy. But this is an example of self awareness completely paying off, really understanding the material and delivering on all fronts for what the movie needed to be. As I said, Ready or Not was a blast and one of my favorite film experiences in the movie theaters this year. At number 4, I have Blinded by the Light. What a wonderful, delightful film that really had a lot to say about several different things. Now, first of all, the most surface level of them all is the power and impact of art, which so many of us that are in this little film community here online can understand. We can really connect with that, though we may not be huge fans of Bruce Springsteen and his music may not be the connecting factor. It doesn't really matter in the end because it's about art really connecting with you, inspiring you, shaping you as a person, and that really was a message I loved to see taken with such care in a major picture like this. And then we get to family and really what it means to be an individual without sacrificing others, to be your own person who has to break out on their own without having to hurt your family or hurt those others who have been there, whether or not they agree with your choices. And that works on both fronts, and I think that is handled so well. Then we get racism thrown in there as well, and that was also handled beautifully. This movie just made me smile for most all of it. It got a little bit heavier than I was anticipating, but it's just a really good, feel-good type of film that succeeded on almost every front. Now, some of the fantastical, like, musical type of moments were a little bit much for me. It pushed a little bit of that cheesiness a bit much, and it ended up being the formula you're anticipating. So that's why it just missed out on getting into my top 3, but this is still certainly in contention for my top 10 films of the year so far. I loved it. Finishing at number 3, we have The Peanut Butter Falcon. What a lovely surprise this movie was. One of the funniest films I think I've seen in movie theaters so far. Now we have this buddy adventure film that plays by a lot of the formulas we've seen, but something as small as having one of them have Down syndrome completely changes the tone. It completely changes the meaning and sheds light on a community that is so underrepresented in Hollywood. And it was just so great to see this character fully realized, well written, and getting to play a role like this in a film where they're the co-lead with Dakota Johnson and Shia LaBeouf. It was just amazing, and that character was so good. Plus, we have Shia LaBeouf, who turned in quite possibly the best performance of his entire career. He is great in this movie, and Dakota Johnson also really puts in a lovely performance. But it's the bond between our two guys in the leads here that sells this entire film. I had such a good time being around them, learning with them, experiencing life with them. And the adventure, the laughs, the heartwarming moments, all of it just worked perfectly. Now, this film also unfolds in a formulaic fashion. But what it is that really keeps this from being able to be top 2 for me personally is that chase side story. Shia LaBeouf's character gets into some trouble, and then we have these characters quite literally like chasing them. It's like a old school Looney Tunes style chase, and I think we actually could have completely done away with that, and it would have made the film a little bit heavier and a little bit more meaningful. But as it is, it was a breakthrough type of film that I want to see more of, and right now is 100% in my top 10 for the year. Coming up in my runner-up position, we have Loose. Another film I didn't get the chance to review here on the channel. Loose is a doozy. It is one that I had to really sit on, really think about, and come to grips with. And upon first leaving the theater, my thoughts were a little bit more jumbled. But as I've thought about it, as I've really given thought to all of the aspects this film brings to screen, the more impactful it is to me, the greater it is, and the more that I realize I need to go see it again. Loose is a race relations film that is not really like any other race relation movie we've received ever, honestly. First of all, it's set up like a thriller. It pretty much grabs the audience by the throat right off the bat and doesn't really let up for the whole duration of the movie. You're constantly kind of on edge because everything from the script to the performances to the music and the cinematography puts you off balance in like every type of situation that's going down in this movie. You're never able to kind of settle into what's happening. And I loved that. I thought that was great. As we were moving on throughout the movie, this thriller started to unfold. It started to peel back layer by layer of what was actually the underlying messages of the movie. So all of these characters were super gray. There was no black and white here. We all lived in a spectrum within this movie, and I thought it was really stellar work to get us to that point. The acting is out of this world. Kelvin, who is our lead Luce here, is amazing. What a performance. I've seen him only once before, and this was just a stellar performance from him. Octavia Spencer delivers one of the best performances of her already astounding career. She is so good, as is her sister in this movie, who's not getting the attention she deserves because she was great. Naomi Watts, this was the best performance I've seen Naomi Watts give in a decade plus. She was fantastic. And then Tim Roth was also great. Everybody was great. It deals with heavy issues in such a fantastic way. Now, I do think it drags through the second act of the movie. It does kind of get to a point where, like, okay, we're getting a bit repetitive right now. Everything's starting to feel a little bit samey over and over. So we need to keep it going. And that ending is going to be quite divisive, I believe. However, it's certainly one of the best movies I've watched this year and one I highly recommend. The Loose comes in at the runner-up spot. Coming in at the top spot, my number one movie for August is The Nightingale. That's right, another film I didn't get a chance to review here on my channel that I absolutely adored. The Nightingale is an Australian-based gothic drama that is told through a revenge film and hits you over the head like a 5-ton bat. I mean, it was insane. This movie delivers on the gore and brutality you'd expect from an indie horror, but without the over-gratification and the exploitation of it all. You can distinctly feel it's from a female director because it deals with rape, but it deals with rape in the least sexual and most horrific context I have seen in some time. We have amazing performances from everyone in this movie. What I really love about The Nightingale is that we not only deal with sexism and the horrors of being a woman, not only then, but how that translates so well into the hardships of being a woman today, but also racism. Again, I was not anticipating, and I did not know the indigenous people subplot was such a major role in this film, but I loved it. Sometimes us Americans need to be reminded we weren't the only country who did really terrible things. Australia has quite a past itself, and, well, the British, yeah, they did a lot of not so good crap for a long time to a lot of folks worldwide. And it was just great to see these two people bond over not so great circumstances. What I loved is that we never went overboard. We never got into this like Lara Croft Tomb Raider type of revenge story. It felt real. It felt authentic to how people act and how people mentally are able to process things. It was dark. I don't know if I want to watch this ever again, but it was so effective and so affecting. It's impossible to leave this movie not a little bit messed up. It was beautifully crafted. The cinematography was absolutely amazing. The imagery was stunning. The metaphors and the symbolism that were injected were just gorgeous. The score was stellar. The script was so layered and nuanced that it certainly takes quite some time to unpack and dissect. My only real negative is that the second act starts to drag. You've heard me say that quite a bit, but it's really difficult to nail the pacing and have like a perfectly executed pace for a movie. The Nightingale doesn't quite reach that level, but I mean, it's such an engrossing experience that you still get lost in the journey. So, The Nightingale is my number one pick for the month of August. So that's it. That is my ranking for all of the new releases I saw in theaters for August 2019. What did you think? How do you feel about how I ranked these films? And more importantly, how do you rank the movies you saw in August? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you're always up to date on my latest videos. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!